So I don't know about you, but one of the words that I got really tired of hearing in this whole thing was this word right here, unparalleled. These are unparalleled times, unparalleled experience, unparalleled. And it was like, And then they always tried to draw a parallel between either the Great Recession or the one that I heard the most of was our experience as a nation during the Great Depression, which is kind of ridiculous if you know your history at all. Do you know how long the Great Depression lasted in America? From October of 1929 until our entrance into World War II in 1941, 12 years later. That's what we're comparing Corona to. It's like, wow, we're kind of, I don't know what word would be best to describe us, but really, that was 12 years long. This has been a couple of months, and we compare it over and over again to the Great Depression. Now, the reality is, though, there were things that happened in the Great Depression that reshaped our grandparents' and great-grandparents' values. If you know anything about this time period, because it lasted so long, they came out of it a very different country. Our grandparents and great-grandparents lived by new financial rules after the Great Depression was over. You use what you have, right? You use what you have. You always avoid debt. You save for rainy days. Used is just as good as new, and things have more than one use. These were just some of the values that came out of the Great Depression in our grandparents and great-grandparents' lives. They lived by these principles. Now, the reality is obviously there are some people who still live by some of these. Like, things have more than one use. I mean, there's some people in America, like pockets in America, where they come up with new inventions, different ways to use different things. Or, you know, your stove is broken, but do you have an iron? Well, you can use that and fry up some sausages. Although I still think some things should only have one use. I just am not comfortable with that at all, but I think like one use, nothing else, right? So I really am kind of hopeful, and the reason I'm doing this series is because I want to make sure that we capture some of the key lessons God may want us to learn because of what we are going through and have gone through so far. And one of the things that I hope is going to come out of this is that there will be some reshaping of some financial values in America. Because the reality is, I don't think this is going to be too big a stretch for anyone to get, right? Before Corona, I want what I want it right now, and I don't want to wait for anything, is kind of the American financial values. Am I overstating that? Maybe understating it, right? And so there are all kinds of consequences for this. We confuse wants and needs. We use debt for wants, not for needs. We spend beyond our means, right? Just some of the outcomes of this. And so there are all kinds of consequences because we have these financial values in place. I want what I want it right now, and I don't want to wait for anything. So because of these values, there are all kinds of consequences. Years ago, I was helping one of the stories that stands out in my mind. Years ago, I was helping this woman. I'm a huge fan of Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. If you hear me talk, you're going to hear me talk about it even today. I love this course, changed my life. So I was helping this woman, and she was starting to work on her budget. She was in her 40s. And so she was listing, one of the things you do is you list all your debts. And so she started listing her debts, and she had a mortgage in college debt still to pay in her 40s. She had that much debt in college. Basically, it was more than my mortgage on my house. In her 40s, after paying for 20 years, she still owed that much in college debt. And I'm like, and she's not a doctor, she's not a psychologist, she's not an engineer. I'm like, what? So I asked her, I'm like, what did you do? And she laughed, she said, yeah, I had a lot of fun in college. She had a lot of fun in college. She went on trips and and back then it was a lot easier to get college debt. They would give you so much in college loans. Back then, it was a lot easier. You didn't have to have your parents sign for it. You could just get it. And so she got it, and she ran up an enormous bill that she will probably be paying on until she dies for a college degree at a cheap university. She didn't go to Harvard. She went to one of the smaller UWs in Wisconsin. There's no reason for this. But that's what we want. It's like, yeah, I'm in college, I might as well do this, and I might as well go here and go on a vacation, go on a trip and buy this and buy clothes and go out to eat every night and okay. I want what I want it right now, and I don't want to wait for anything, I don't want to save for anything, I just want it all right now. And this is a need, not a want. We're so confused about this, and there are all kinds of consequences for that. Because she's not alone. Lots and lots of people live like that. Most Americans, probably. Now, the problem is, of course, is the foolishness of the way that we have these values that we've adopted were really revealed when a huge financial crisis like Corona comes along. Because all of a sudden, people who are extended way beyond and not being responsible financially, they have bills that they can't pay. And now because of that, they have conflict in their home because the stress level goes up high. I read in China, where this all really, in the Wuhan province, that once they were able to get out, the divorce rate skyrocketed. Because once they were free to be free from that person, they got free from that person. Anyone think that's not going to happen in America? There's going to be a huge amount of that. There will be foreclosures. There will be people losing their homes and losing their cars and losing their toys because they couldn't afford it in the first place. And they made financial decisions that weren't wise. So one of the things I really am hoping is that out of this time, we really reevaluate our interactions with money. So that's what this series is about. We want to learn from this. Where do we go from here is the title of this series, and we want to really think about what do we want to learn from this? What do we not want to be different when this is all done? What are some values we can incorporate that will make our lives better going forward? And so what I want to show you today are 3 financial myths that were exposed by Corona. So you have a program again. Would you open up your program? And inside you'll find your notes. You want to take your notes out? Grab a pen, something to write with. Welcome to those of you, of course, who are watching on YouTube, and to those of you who are watching on our website at pennyhillchurch.life. We're so glad that you're watching. You have these notes, so I want to ask you to get them out. And let's jump right into this today. So myth number 1, saving money is optional. Saving money is optional. Again, this is not what our grandparents and great-grandparents valued, right? They really valued saving for rainy day because they knew that storms could come, and the Great Depression lasted for 12 years. It reshaped their value around this one. They knew that they couldn't do this. And of course, what happens is, that urgency to save just goes away over time. And so it got down to the point, I have 6 kids. And when you have 6 kids, you see a lot of different financial values among your children. Some of my kids were fantastic savers. A couple of them were really incredible. And then there were the other side. And one of my kids, when he was in high school, got this kind of advanced computer piece as a part of his online schooling. And so all of a sudden he could get a job, and he got this job that was paying him an enormous amount of money. He made like $5,000 within about 4 months. Now that's a lot of money for a high school kid. By the end of the year, in his savings account, he had 0. And he didn't have a nice used car sitting in the driveway. Didn't take it and go buy a $5,000 car. Oh no. Matter of fact, when you looked in his room, no new furniture, no new computers, nothing. He had simply blown all of it on video games and eating out and food and a few little items. He had nothing really to show for it. In that short a time, all gone. Savings was not a priority for him. And it's indicative of how so many people live in America. It's like money comes in, money goes out. And it's because of these, matter of fact, look at how it used to be. Not that long ago in our country, in 1970, the average personal savings rate was 11%. We saved 11% of all our take-home pay. And that was not at a time when when you had 2-parent incomes, or both mom and the dad out working. You had one, typically, and we were saving 11% of our income because we didn't define everything as a need, and we just didn't live the way that we live now. And then look at where we're at now. Just over 2% of our take-home pay is all we save. We've elevated our lifestyle to the point where we just can't afford to save anymore. And this is what's driving it, right? Impulse spending, retail therapy. You know how many times I've heard retail therapy in the last 2 months? Oh man, it's like all we do. So we can't go out to a restaurant, we can't have anything, so we're going to do some retail therapy. And it never works, they're never happy. It's just like this little blip, and then they have to do some more. It's like instant gratification, constantly elevating our lifestyle. Do you know what people do? If you were to get, the average American get a big pay raise this next week, you know what they would do? They would immediately start thinking about, now I can get this car, and now I can get this boat, and now I can get this bigger house, and now we just elevate our expenses to meet our new income level. So it's like rather than having the capacity to save, we just raise it. Inability to distinguish between a need and want. So these are the issues that are going on in our society today. We know that this is what's happening, and there's quite a price to pay for it. Because the truth is this: if I'm wise, then I will prioritize saving. Wise people prioritize saving. It's a myth to believe that saving money is optional. That's a myth. It's wise to prioritize your savings. Matter of fact, when this all happened and the stock market fell, and people started losing so much money, there were two verses that immediately popped into my mind. They're both in my message today. That's why I knew someday after we were at this point where we could gather again, I knew I'd be teaching on this subject. So here's verse number 1 that popped right in my mind. Look at this. It says, "In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has." So the Bible says you are wise if when you earn an income, you set aside part of it. And you save it for a rainy day. But you are foolish if you spend every single dollar that you take in. That is a foolish way to live. So I'm not calling anyone a fool. I'm just showing you the verse. You make your own decision about what camp you're going to live in. I'm not calling anyone foolish. I'm just showing you what the Bible says. It says it's foolish to live that way. Now, the good news is, like I said, I'm really hoping this reshapes some of our values. Well, take a look at this. Coronavirus, this is a headline I saw recently, could create a generation of super savers. And did you know that the savings rate in America hit 33% just recently? Now, there is no thought in my mind that we're going to continue to save 33% of our take-home pay, right? None of us believe that. But at least temporarily, we have shifted our values, and there's so many examples of this happening. So again, let me just show you what the goal is. Your goal is to get to the point where you're saving, that you have an emergency fund that has 3 to 6 months of your total take-home pay in an emergency fund that you never touch. That's the goal. Because, by the way, do you know why 3 to 6 months? That's how long it takes to find a job in America if you lose your job. The average unemployed person is unemployed 3 to 6 months in America. Now, if you're unemployed and you have 3 to 6 months savings, you don't have a crisis. I'm not saying you're not going to be nervous. I'm not going to say you're not going to be concerned. But you have the ability to get through that time without accumulating debt, right? It's really, really important. So that's the goal, 3 to 6 months of saving. So some things about how to do it: automate it. And I don't have these down your notes. If you want to write them on the side, you can. This is really important. You can automate. You can have a certain amount taken out of your paycheck every single month. So I used to have an aspirational goal to save money. I'm going to save money this month. And I get to the end of the month, nothing. This month. This is the month where I'm going to save money. And I get to the end of the month, nothing. So the change for me came when I started automating it. I just have it automatically taken out of my checkings in the middle of the month, and it's a set amount. So that way it's not up to me. Now the interesting thing is I didn't have that money left over, but when it's just taken out automatically, I'm fine. I pay all my bills, I still eat. I mean, I put gas in my car, it's all still there. Automate it. You will be amazed. You will just simply adjust to the less income. And then you can start saving. The other thing to do is get a second job if necessary, especially, this is what a lot of people are doing, is trying to earn a little income. So you can pick up a little part-time job on the side and earn $300 or $400 a month extra in income that you could designate just for savings. If you earn $400 a month at a part-time job, you'll save $5,000 a year into your emergency fund. And you don't have to do it permanently. You do it for a short time, build your emergency fund, and then you can stop doing that extra job. And then keep it safe. This is not money you invest in the stock market. You don't put it in anything high risk, you keep it safe, and you protect it because it's only for emergency. The other thing is, it's for emergencies. It's not for a trip. Okay? No, it's not for, oh my goodness, airfare is so cheap to Florida right now. We're going to go take the family to Disney World. That's not an emergency. If you want to save for that, save for that. But we've defined these things as emergencies in the past, and that's what's got us to this point. So like I said, I'm really hoping that our values are reshaped by what we're going through, and here's one of the stories. There's a young woman named Dakota who lives in Canton, Georgia, and she's 25 years old. She had been trying, before Corona hit, to build up an emergency fund. But every time she got close, there were expenses that popped up, as we all know, and so she would take her emergency fund back down to zero. She's, by the way, a single mom with a couple of kids. She said, "This pandemic lit a fire under me." She said, "I never want to feel that fear of wondering, what are we going to do?" She said, "I never want to feel that again." Because that's what you feel when you have absolutely no savings and a crisis like this hits. You are afraid. So she said, with her kids' $1,200 a month daycare closed, she's putting all that money away in her savings and working to change her habits so that when things last, when they come back to normal. She said the time at home has helped her realize just how much she was splurging on unnecessary things. She said, too much makeup, too many clothes, and toys for my kids that they never even really played with. Unnecessary. She said, I've realized that everything I could ever need is here right now. I don't want to lose that mindset. Does that describe you? Is prioritizing saving money important to you? It's one of the values that needs to shift in our nation. What we're doing now, we need to maintain. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing that I really hope shifts in all of this is this. Myth number 2, debt's a tool to get what I want now. And I'm really optimistic that at least some people will get this message. Because a lot of people just think of debt as a tool. I want what I want right now. I don't want to wait for anything. And so we use debt to get it. We don't save for vehicles. We don't save for boats. We don't save for vacations. We don't save for anything. We just put it on the credit card and rotate it on from one credit card to the next credit card to the next credit card. Matter of fact, I don't know how old this slide is. It's not that old, though. The average household debt, so not individual, household, they have $16,000, almost $17,000 in credit card debt. They have almost $30,000 in car loans. And that number just always stuns me when I see how high it is, how much people pay in their car loans. $30,000. That's like 6 of my cars. That's like 6. I could buy 6 cars for $30,000. It's like, I don't understand the concept. And I'm not judging anyone. It's fine. Do whatever you want to do. But it's like, it's like used is just as good as new. Used is just as good as new. My car got me here safely. Hopefully it'll get me home safely. So it's 17 years old and still running fine. So what's wrong with that? Student loans, $50,000 is the average household, mortgages. So we have this massive comfort level with debt. We don't mind being in debt. But what happens when all of a sudden the economy shifts? Because what this is a representation of is we get our money, we don't have enough money to get what we want, so then we borrow all the money that we need in order to get everything we have. So we are completely extended beyond what we can afford. And what happens when the economy goes down? To people who are this overburdened with debt. Well, all of a sudden they have a real problem, don't they? I mean, like I said earlier, we know, and I've been reading online about this, prepping this message, they're predicting foreclosures. People will lose their homes because of this. Right now, they can't lose their home. And they can't be evicted from their apartment, and they can't have their possessions taken away from them, but that's not going to last forever. And they're not able to make payments anymore because so many people have lost their jobs or lost income, and so it's just not going to work anymore. And some people are about to get a very, very painful lesson in how dangerous debt really is, because that's the truth. The truth is, debt makes me vulnerable. And I don't have that down on your notes because I thought of it too late to put it on there. But there's like a couple of truths to this. Debt makes me vulnerable. When I go into debt, I'm presuming on the future, and that's risky. And I mean, people took out mortgages and houses they couldn't really afford on vehicles. They took out loans on vehicles they couldn't really afford, assuming that their job would remain and their income level would remain the same, right? That's how you have to do it. And all of a sudden it didn't. And now they're really headed for some pain. And the truth is, I need a plan to get out of debt. And planning is God's way of dealing with a problem like our finances. Take a look at what he says. He says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. So let me show you this in just 3 words. Plans, your plan. Your financial plan is either leading you toward poverty or it's leading you toward profit. Your financial plan is leading you one way or the other. And here's the thing, everybody has a plan. Everybody has a plan. I had a plan when I graduated from high school about money. I knew nothing. I didn't even know how to balance a checkbook when I graduated. I knew nothing about money, nothing about how it worked. My plan was earn money, spend money. All the bills go in the bottom drawer. And then once in a while, take them out and pay them. And if you can get your checkbook to balance within $50 or $100, that's fine. Just bury $500 in the checking account and never touch it. So that was my plan. I paid so many late fees in bills, bank fees, because I was overdrawn over and over and over again. And finally, I reached the day where I saw another bank fee, $20 they have to cover another check of mine, and I was so mad. I'm like, my plan stinks. My plan is taking money from my pocket, money that I don't want to give to a banker. They work banker's hours. They hardly ever work. Every day is a holiday to them. They're always closed. For goodness sakes, I don't want them to have more of my cash. I got mad about it. I'm like, I need a new plan. Everybody has a plan. Your plan may be just like my plan was, but it's a terrible plan, and I needed to change. Because your plan is either bringing you, the Bible says, towards poverty or towards profit. It's bringing you one way or the other, and you got to figure it out. Especially really important right now, because I saw this headline recently. Did you see this? Nearly 1/3 of Americans are dealing with lower income due to coronavirus. Did you know that? Maybe some of you were affected by it. I've taken 2 pay cuts during this time. Still have a job, grateful for what I have. But I've taken 2 pay cuts. So I'm not alone. 1/3 of all Americans are living on less right now. And they couldn't make it on what they were living on. We need to make a plan. And our plan needs to make sense based on what we're doing. By the way, there's something I've never told you about in a message ever. There's a principle, and I got it from Dave Ramsey in Financial Peace University, that is important, and you need to have this in the back of your mind if you ever lose your job. And I should have been teaching it all along, because obviously it just happened to a lot of people. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and a lot of people we're not done yet. There will be more coming. And so you need to know this principle. It's on the back of your notes, and it's on the Dave Ramsey website. It's called the 4 walls principle. 4 walls means if you have a tremendous crisis, if you lose your job, you only focus on the 4 walls, which is your shelter. So pay your rent and your mortgage. Rent or your mortgage. That's it. Then you pay your utilities, so they can't turn off your electricity or your water bill. Then you pay for your food, because you got to eat, and then you keep your transportation going. And now that means, for many people, they need to sell their $15,000 car and get a good $4,000 car. But you got to get to work. So you get to work, you eat food, and you keep the lights on and shelter over your head. And that's it. Everything else is out of scope. You don't do it. And literally, he means everything else. That means you cancel Netflix, Disney, Hulu, Spotify, Amazon Prime, and you lower your phone plan to the lowest possible amount. And by the way, vacations and trips are all canceled. None of them are essential. They're not needs. They're all wants. And you cancel all eating out. What I was stunned to discover when I started prepping this message was that last one. Do you know how many times every single day in America millennials eat out? Out of 365 days in a year, guess, how many times do you think they eat out in 365 days in a year? That would be high. Well, then good news, no, it's less than that. It's only 241 times. It's only 4.2. That averages out over 4 times a week they're eating out. Think about how your grandparents did it. Even when I was being raised, if we ate out 15 or maybe 20 times in a year, that was a big deal. And now it is expected that I will get to eat out 4.2 times a week. Wow. I mean, it's no wonder we can't make our budgets work. It's no wonder we can't save anything. Do you know how much money you waste when you eat out that much? I mean, it's just a tremendous, expensive way to do it. This is what has to get changed. So here's what our plan needs. First, our plan needs this. You either start, restart, or rework your budget. Start, restart, or rework your budget. So some of you don't have a budget, so you need to start a budget. Go to that website, daveramsey.com, and get on a budget. He even has a free budgeting app you can put on your phone and start budgeting today. So some of you are like, yep, I need to start one. I don't have one. Some of you need to restart it. Some of you made a New Year's resolution, or you listened to a message, or you went through Dave Ramsey at some point in the past. You're like, yep, we were really solid on it, and then we kind of just got a little wishy-washy about it. And you need to restart what you know how to do. Or some of you need to rework it. That's what I'm doing right now because my income has changed. One of my bills went up and my income went down twice. And so I need to rework the budget that I have to make sure that it all works going forward. So again, people are starting to do this, and I love these stories. I love hearing this because this is my hope for everybody. There's a woman in Lansing, Michigan named Amy. She's 38 and she's single. She was one of those, not in the millennial age range, but she said she was eating out. She was ordering takeout 4 nights a week or more. She said, I'm single and I work a lot, so coming home to cook dinner was the last thing I wanted to do. She said, I am now saving a ton of money by learning to love leftovers. That's a great sentence. Learn to love leftovers. She said, I cut my food budget in half from $200 down from $400 a month to $200 a month by spending it only on groceries. And then, to keep herself committed, she's now sending that extra $200 a month automatically to her savings account every payday. So automate your savings, she's doing it. She's doing both. She cut her expenses and automated her savings. In 1 year, $200 a month is going to be over $2,400. In 2 years, she'll have over almost $5,000 saved by making this decision. And $5,000 really helps with a lot of emergencies, doesn't it? Your transmission blows, it's $2,000, and you got $5,000 in the bank. Do you have a crisis? You have sadness because you don't want to write that check, but you don't have an emergency and you're not going into debt. This is a big deal. She said, I was tipping the scales for a number of years. If anything major would have happened, I wouldn't have had anything to fall back on. I never want to be in that position again. That's why I'm saying this today. I never want any of you to be in that position. I want you to be free from those kind of fears and worries. So what do you need to do with this one? Start, restart, or rework your budget. The second thing you have to do is do what Dave Ramsey calls the baby steps. And I'm not going to go through them all. They're on the back of your notes, and you can go on his website and read about the 7 baby steps to get out of debt. But I've been saying something since January of this year. I'm going to say it again today. If you will make these changes that we're talking about today, if you will start saving money and you will really get ferocious about cutting out your debt in your life, here's what's going to happen. Time is going to pass. Time is going to pass. And then if you've made a good plan, time passes and your savings grow and your debt goes down. And you just feel much more comfortable when you're in that position. And I know this because time passed for me. I paid off my last debt, minus my mortgage, I still have that, February of this year. Right before all of this happened. Paid off my last debt. Because I got on the right plan and time passed and my savings grew and my debt was gone. And I want that for all of you. Time is going to pass. Is the plan that you have in your life bringing you profit or poverty? You choose. Okay. Now, the third myth, and I've saved it for last because it's the most important in my mind, and this myth is this: if I can just get enough money, I'll be safe. If I can just get in the right career, I'll be safe. If I can just start working for the right company, there are some derivations of this one. If I can just get rid of the right company, the right job, then I'll be safe. I wonder how many people believe that anymore. I read this and it was kind of stunning. Do you know that as the stock market collapsed and really lost value, I read this. In one day, the wealthiest 10 people on the planet lost $38 billion in one day. And by the end of 1 week, they had lost $444 billion, almost $500 billion. Now, I don't care how much money you have. If you lose $500 billion in 1 week, do you think you'll have some emotion inside? Now, before we start a GoFundMe page for all the 10 wealthiest people on the earth, I've read that they're okay now, so you don't need to worry about them. They've recovered. But man, I mean, there were two verses that popped in my mind when all this started happening. I already showed you one, here's the other. The Bible says this, in the blink of an eye, wealth disappears. Isn't that what happened? You know, there were people who were ready to retire, and all of a sudden, 40% of what they'd saved for retirement, gone. And they couldn't retire. That happened. In the blink of an eye, wealth disappears. It will sprout wings and fly away like an eagle. So if you're putting your hope in money or your savings, you have your hope in something that's really, really, really shaky. And everyone in our country just saw that happen, whether they recognize it or not. It cannot be in money. It can't be money. The truth is this. My future is safe because I have God in my life, not because I have money in my account. That's why I'm safe. It is all about God. God calms storms. God brings us through storms. God takes care of us if we will turn to Him and rely on Him. It's all about God. It's all about God. Matter of fact, in the New Testament, Paul wrote to a young pastor named Timothy, and he said, here's what I want you to do when you're teaching in your church, so I'm doing this for you today. He said, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, not to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. Don't we all know that now? Wealth is so uncertain. It can be here tomorrow and gone in a week. Put your hope instead in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. So he says you have two possibilities going forward. You can put your hope back in money, say, I'm just going to get in the right job, I'm going to get the right career, I'm going to get the right amount of my savings account, I'm going to have the right amount saved for retirement, I'm going to, and put all your hope in this, but it's all uncertain. And we just saw a great visual, a powerful visual of just how uncertain it all is. It can be all taken from you so fast, right? At the start of the year, the company I worked for was having such an amazing year. We were all headed for bonuses, and we were all headed for pay raises, and then all of a sudden the bonuses are gone, and the pay raises are gone, and then many people's jobs were gone. And we're lucky because many people, the company they work for is gone. And the business they worked for is gone. That's just our reality. So if you're putting your hope in anything in this column, you're in trouble. Because it's uncertain. And the outcome of putting your hope in this will always be fear and anxiety and worry and stress. And if you have that in your life, you know you're trusting in something unreliable. And you should be afraid. But he goes on to say, put your hope in God. He's the God who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment anyway. So it's like if there are layers of this thing, we put our hope in money and possessions rather than the God who allows us to have money, jobs, careers, possessions. It's like we're at the wrong level. We need to go up a step. We need to go up a step and put our hope in the God who gives us all this. And then he says he gives it to us for us to enjoy. Now, one of the key things that I've been talking about over and over again through this whole time since this started, it's a story that all of you, if you've watched at all online, you've heard me talk about this again and again, the story of Jesus with his disciples in the boat. They get out on the boat, Jesus is exhausted, he falls asleep in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, and a huge storm comes up and the waves are coming over the side, and they do everything in their power to save the ship, and they can't. And at the last second, as they're about to drown, they wake Jesus up and said, do something, don't you care if we drown? And he gets up and he goes, peace, be still, and the storm is done. But he turns to them then and he asks them a question. He goes, where's your faith? See, they had faith. The answer to the question was, our faith was in ourselves. The answer to the question, our faith was in ourselves. We were going to sail through this. We were going to bail water. We were going to make the adjustments that we needed to make. That's where their faith was. It wasn't that they didn't have faith. They had faith, and it was all in themselves, and it resulted in their ship sinking. You have faith. You have faith right now. Many Americans have faith in themselves to figure this out and to get back on their feet and to figure, okay, and he's saying, put your faith instead back in me. Not in yourself, put it in me. That's how he wants us to live our lives. Matter of fact, I think one of the key things from that story is this. If you'll bring the little bit of faith you have to God, you will experience God in your storms. Now, I wish I could stand here and say, hey, one of the cool things about being a follower of Jesus is when you turn to him in your storms, he calms the storms every time. They're just gone. I wish I could say that. Not true. There are two possible outcomes. He will either calm the storm, and I've seen him do that, unexpectedly, in a way that you never saw coming. He steps in and changes everything. But the other thing he does is he goes through the storm with you and gives you peace and safety and takes you out of the storm. But either way, you get him when he is your focus and you've put your hope in him. So that means two things. First, it means you remember what God has promised us. You have to remember what God has promised us. The promises in the Bible are the key to living a no-fear life. Matter of fact, the promises of God are so important to me that I now put them in my prayer notebook, and so when I sit down to pray, I read the promises of God that really are meaningful to me over and over and over. So I keep what he's promised in my mind every day. Because he can't lie. If he can lie, then we're wasting our time here. Because he's made promises like this. My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. Doesn't say all your wants, doesn't say all your greeds, but all of your needs he has promised to meet. Now, the thing about this one, this is a great promise, right? God promised, and by the way, God has no shortage of cash in heaven. There is nothing wrong with the economy of heaven right now. Matter of fact, God is so rich that when they were paving the streets, they're like, what do we use? It's like, just use some gold. I don't even care. So they paved the streets with gold. Some of you are like, God, just send me a little pavement from heaven. That's all I need, just some blacktop. Because it's gold. Because there's nothing wrong with the economy of God. Nothing. He has no issues with money. So when he says, I love you and I'm for you and I promise to meet all your needs, that's an amazing promise, but it's a conditional promise. Do you know what the condition is that triggers this? It's this. Hebrews 11:6, without faith it's impossible to please God. It's what Jesus said to his disciples in a storm. Where is your faith? Where's your faith? Faith is what connects you to the power of God and allows you to experience God. And so you have to you know what he's promised, and then you direct your faith to God, and letter B, I have to demonstrate faith in some way. To experience God, you have to demonstrate faith in some way. And there are many ways. I put just a few of them on a slide because I thought I want to show you this. Here are some ways to demonstrate faith to God in the middle of a storm when you don't see the way through it. First, you turn to him first, and the key word there is first. What we do, we're just like the disciples, we turn to him last. We let ourselves try and figure it out. I'm going to put a plan together. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make this work somehow. And we make ourselves worried and anxious and stressed and overwhelmed trying to figure it all out. And then we finally turn to God. Like, stop. You go to him first. First, you go to him. And then second, you thank God before you even see him do anything. If you thank him after he does something, that's not faith. That's gratitude. So if you're out of a job and all of a sudden God provides an amazing opportunity for you and you get a good job and you thank him, that's gratitude. Hey, God, thanks for the job. It's faith to thank him before he does it, right? And you know what the promise is for that? And I didn't put it on here. The promise is Jesus made this promise to you. He said, I'm always at work. Always. And what he's doing is what he promised, that he is working to bring good out of everything you go through. Those are his promises to you if you follow Jesus. He is always at work and he will bring good out of everything you go through. So if those promises are true, then thank him before you even see him do anything, right? That's faith. So God, I've lost my job. I don't know the future forward. I don't know the path forward in this. But you promise that you'll meet my needs, that you are already at work, and you'll bring good from this. So before I see what you do, thank you. Because you're turning to him now. And God is just, when he hears that in heaven, he's like, wow. Oh yeah, that's what I like to hear. Because you're trusting in him, and he wants us to trust in him and rely on him and put our hope in him. But then there's one more aspect to this, and that's give. Give. Now, I believe in a concept, and I'm going to teach on this right now, called tithing. You give the first tenth of what you earn back to God at the place where you worship. That's what I believe. I believe the Bible teaches that. I've lived that since I was about 21 years old, other than a short span, 2016 and 17, where I didn't. Other than that, I've done this almost all my life. First tenth of what I earn, I give back to God at the place where I worship. Now, does it take any faith to do that in the middle of Corona? Does it take any faith to do that in the middle of pay cuts, 2 pay cuts? Yep, sure does. And I have not in any way compromised that. When this all started, I didn't stop. And when I took my first pay cut, I didn't stop. And when I took my second pay cut, I didn't stop. I don't stop. I won't stop. Because I believe something. And remember what triggers the activity of God is belief, faith. And what I believe is this. If you give a little, you get a little. A farmer who plants just a few seeds will get only a small crop, but if he plants much, he will reap much. Matter of fact, in these verses, he's talking about money. He is specifically saying that if you, the rate at which you give away, God will give back to you. He's specifically talking about their finances. And another translation says, whoever sows generously will also reap generously. So I don't compromise this because I believe that. I believe that less in my hands, but obedient to God, will trigger far more than just keeping it all to myself. I believe that. That's why I always knew in that time period when I would stop tithing for those couple of years, I always knew I would begin again someday because I believe that to the core of who I am, that less in my hands, but the full blessing of God will always be better than me holding it all like this. I believe that. I believe in God's promises, so I do it. There's something I've never talked to you about because I don't really know how to explain this other than just to tell you the story and you make your own decision. 2016 was when I stopped tithing for the first time since I was 21 years old. So at that time I went through a pretty awful divorce. All of a sudden I'm a single dad. I have no job. So 10% of zero is easy to calculate, 0. So I didn't have a job, I had no income, so it's like, all right, nothing to tithe. So, but then I got a job, and then I started working, and I still didn't right away restart it, because I was scared. I'm a single dad, I've got 1 income in the house, I got 2 kids at home, I don't know how to make this work, and I was scared. I knew what he'd promised. I knew he'd promised that things would go better if I did this, that he would be with me if I would take a step of faith. Like the disciples, he was saying to me, Brian, where's your faith? Do you trust me or not? And he was so patient with me. And time passed, and I got more and more confident, and I still remember when I wrote the first ones, like, oh boy. And I kind of did it, and then I took it back, and then I did it for a little while, and then I finally made the decision, this is just what I'm going to do. This is what I believe about him. I believe, so I'm going to do it. And I just committed, and I haven't stopped. And Corona didn't even begin. I mean, there's no thought in my mind about backing off during Corona. None. This is just what I'm doing. I trust him. My hope is in him. The interesting thing is when I look back now, when I look back at when I restarted again, I was in this very specific role that I liked. It was okay in my company. It was a good job, and it paid my bills, but I didn't really love it. I had no thought at all that I would be in it long term. I didn't enjoy it. Right when I started giving, the company offered me the opportunity to start working in this other field. It was a brand new field. They didn't even have it in their entire building. And they let me do it on the side. So I was just doing it part-time at first. And so I was doing both of these jobs. And this other piece they allowed me to do, I love. My days fly when I'm doing this. I completely love what I'm doing. And so the interesting thing is when Corona happened and they laid off all these people, I got a phone call saying, we want to create a brand new role for you here. This old piece is done. We want you to do this full-time for us going forward. I'm like, oh yeah, sign me up. That's great. I mean, I have only been in the new job for 2 weeks, and I completely love what I'm doing, which I'd been doing for a year and a half, and now I get to do it full-time. Every day I get to go and do this. It's incredible. I love it. I love it. I know there's a real exciting future for me. And coincidentally, all of it started the day I took that step of faith. Right at that time when I said, okay, God, I'm going to trust you, that you will keep your promise to me, that you will not let me fall, that you'll be there for me, and you'll walk through this with me. That's when the opportunity began. Now, some of you skeptical or watching may be thinking, well, that's just a coincidence. Well, all I know is that when I trust God, coincidences happen. I don't believe it's a coincidence at all. I believe that he keeps his promises to those who trust him. I believe that. I really, really am passionate about this subject because this is my prayer for all of you. I pray and really, really want all of you to be debt-free. I mean, that would thrill me if we were a debt-free church, if everyone watching was debt-free. And if everyone watching had 6 months of their take-home pay in an emergency fund that they never, ever, ever used for Disneyland, and they never used for Christmas presents, and they just kept it as an emergency fund for emergencies, and they lived below their means, and they figured out how to cut their budget or increase their income in order to be able to do more. I would love this for all of you. And I would love you to be able to stand here and tell me your story of how God involved himself in your life when you trusted him. I want this for you. That's why I'm telling you this. I want you to have these experiences with God in this world. So if you're a follower of God, and you know that this is an area where you need to make some changes, I want you to know we had someone volunteer that they will teach a Dave Ramsey class. And so if you are sitting here going, or you're watching online, you need this. We know we can't get together in a room and do this, but you know what we're learning? We can do this all virtually. We can teach a virtual class. So you don't need to leave your home. If you want that Financial Peace University class, either fill out your card if you're here today and just write the letters FPU or send us an email. Go online to just send my email, brianrudesill@gmail.com, and just say you want information about that FPU class. And we can get you into this and you can get started. I mean, this changed my whole life, so I'm so passionate about it. And I get no money. Dave Ramsey doesn't even know my name. He gives me nothing for promoting his stuff. I'm just was changed by what I learned in this content. I want everybody else to experience it too. The other thing to really consider is there a step of faith that God is asking you to take to trust him more in the middle of a scary storm? He's asking us to say, he's saying to us, where's your faith? Do you trust me? Do you trust me in the middle of this? It's what his constant question to all of us is. If you're just exploring your faith with us here or online, first off, I'm glad you're watching. I'm glad you're here because we have a God who loves to meet needs. And here's the reality. The greatest need that you have is not financial. Because here's what we know. Okay, this is a little bit crass, but the reality is you're going to die eventually. And then you know how much you will need money? Not at all. None. We're not putting any money in your coffin when we bury you because you don't need it. Money is temporary. It's not what we need the most. What we really need, and our greatest need, is a real relationship with a real God. We need him in our lives so that we can know him personally. And that's what Jesus came to do. Jesus Christ came and gave his life on a cross to pay for all the unloving things we've done so that we can know God Almighty. We can have a real relationship with this personal God. So let me have you bow your heads. Maybe this is the next step for you spiritually, is to let him give you this gift, and he will. If you'll ask for it, he will give it to you. You can say something like this to him. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I know that there are things that I've done wrong in my life, and I admit it to you, and I've heard that you gave your life for me on a cross. So please forgive me. I want you, God. I don't want religion. I don't want rules. I want to really know you. Please let that happen today. Begin that relationship with me as you forgive me. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as we finish, can I ask you to grab your connection card out of your program? And if you're a regular tender, you can fill this out. If you're interested in that FPU class, you can put FPU on here. And again, if you're watching online, you can just send an email to me at brianrudesill@gmail.com. Or go on our website, and there's a place to connect to us at penuelchurch.life. There's a Get Connected tab. Let us know about the course, and if we get enough interest, we can sign you up. So thanks so much for coming. Hope to see you again next week.